how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. Today we're here with Paul Monsky, and Paul Monsky wants to talk about his upcoming comic project, Tantalizing Comics. Did I say that correctly?
Tantalizing Adventures.
Tantalizing Adventures. Of course I said it wrong. I always either say the person's name wrong in the comics. I guess that'll be my trademark thing.
That's all right.
How you doing?
Doing great. It's been a interesting week.
Yeah. We were talking before the chat, man. It's been a rough week for me. So a few people have been contacting me. I'm not ignoring you. I just been working a lot of overtime. Making comics ain't cheap. I'm sure everybody knows that. So I'm, trying to build up a war chest over here. So anyway, enough about me. I always try to treat each video as if it's everybody's first video. So who are you and why are you on my show?
My name's Paul Monsky. I'm a comic book writer, sort of artist, but mainly I'm a comic book fan. I've been reading comic books since I was 5 or 6. In 1985, I walked into what was still a fairly new thing called a comic book shop, and I had been in one before in my hometown, but this was in my college, and checking the place out, and on the shelf were 3 copies of a book called Femforce.
Oh, yeah.
And I'd never seen the likes of such a thing in comic books before. It was kind of striking covers and very voluptuous and curvy women, and I picked up all 3 copies and I started reading it, and I've been a fan ever since. In the mid 90s, when the internet was still fairly new, I had some cousins who were computer people, and everybody was starting a website. People had personal websites, and a lot of them were fan sites for comic book characters, and they were all Marvel or DC characters. So I started a fan site for Femforce.
Oh, cool.
And
is it still active?
Not anymore. No. Once I got married and had kids, I just couldn't do that anymore. But it caught the eye of the publisher for AC Comics, Bill Black, and eventually it became the official fan website.
Oh,
and
cool.
I ran the fan club online, and I did that probably till from 95 or well, the website was a fan site from probably 98 to 2008. So about 10 years.
Okay.
And
cool.
And I would go around and get artwork. I started going to comic book conventions, which I'd never done it before that point. And I would go around and get artwork of Femforce characters so I could have new art to post on the fan website. And one of the artists I met was a gentleman named Ed Coots, who's an artist in New York City. And he did just some really great con sketches for me. And he was affordable. And we kind of struck up a friendship, and I got a commission from him. And he wanted to draw Femforce. He's really good at drawing attractive women. And he asked, since he knew at that point that I was familiar with the publisher, if he would draw a story and that I wrote, would they publish it? So I asked the publisher, and Bill Black said, yeah, absolutely. And so I wrote a story for Femforce, and I tried to make it one set in the past, so I wouldn't screw up their continuity or anything like that. Yeah. So, and Ed drew it, and it was a fan favorite. It was in issue 119 of Femforce.
Yeah, I'm not up there yet. I think I'm up to issue 25.
Yeah, so,
I'm buying them in order, reading them in order.
Yeah.
So I'll get there.
So it's very rare and hard to find. A lot of Femforce is very rare and hard to find.
A lot of AC comics are hard to find.
They, in the early years, Diamond would often have mishaps and lose entire shipments or damage entire shipments. And so, trying to go around. I have all but 2 of the issues, and I'm never probably going to ever get those 2.
Which 2 are you missing?
I can't even remember the numbers now, but it's like 162 and 158 or something. They're pretty high up there. But it was very well received. So we did several more stories for Femforce.
Oh, cool. So I love that. So you were a fan who became a writer of the comic.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, and did stories with Ed, and did some stories with some other artists that were published in FemForce or other AC books. Kind of edited one of their books, issue 128. I was basically put it together, and that kind of set me off on this path. And but as much as I was a fan of FemForce, I didn't, Bill Black, for the most part, writes the stories, and he has set a good path. And I didn't want to ever do a story that was going to mess up his.
Yeah, you can't step on the creator's toes,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Ed said, well, why don't we do our own book and make up your own characters and put out stories. So in the early 2000s, I created some characters, all heroines, different genres. I have a superheroine. I have a space heroine. I had a police detective. I had a time traveling.
Were they all on the same team?
No, they were all different. Well, they're kind of in the same world, but they're separate characters.
And what are their names?
Lieutenant Ann Lee is my space character, and Jen Delora is kind of a time traveling. She's time traveled, and she is a detective. It's kind of a pulp noir
from the DeLorean. A good little nod from Back to the Future.
Who else? Sophia Pinheiro is my superheroine, the Ace.
The Ace, cool.
The Ace, yeah. And I have Alina Aguilar, who is my Jungle Girl.
Okay.
And you've read FemForce, so you know Tara, the Jungle Girl.
Correct. Yes. I've said many times before that I said at the beginning that AC Comics was like my guilty pleasure, and then over the course of working on this channel, I started to realize why do I feel guilty for a comic that I like? So, yeah, it's cheeky. There's some cheesecake in it, but that never hurt nobody. As far as I know, and I'm still at the beginning of AC Comics because I'm a compulsive person. I got started issue number 1. There's nothing objectable about it.
No.
It's not any more suggestive than DC or or Marvel or anything.
Certainly not now. Certainly not nowadays.
Oh, now it's tame. You're absolutely right about that. Now it's actually pretty tame. And so what was the name of your comic that you did for AC?
Well, I didn't do it for AC. I just published it myself, and it's on Indie Planet.
Okay. So I misunderstood.
Yeah, that's on Indie Planet. It's called Va 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 Voom.
Va 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 Voom.
And I made that the name of my company. It has 3 issues, and it's basically an anthology with 5 stories in each issue. I think the first issue has 4 stories, then 5 and 5.
And are these still available now?
They're available on indieplanet.com.
Okay. This is going to sound awfully arrogant, but so many people have been asking me to set up live chats. I forget if I put it in the description. So if
I probably wouldn't even have sent it to you. That's work that's 20 years old. So although actually 2 of the story, well, 1.5 of the stories in there are in Tantalizing Adventures. They've just been color. They're now in color. That book was in black and white. So,
okay.
So I did this Va 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 Voom with Ed and some other artists. And, I've had these characters now for 20 years. And COVID hit. People are at home. Watching a lot of YouTube.
Yeah.
And these, I started watching EVS and your boy Zach and crowdfunding. And I thought, I have a host of stories that I've built up over the years, some of which have been drawn, some of which are just on paper, some of which are just in my head. This sounds like a fun and interesting thing to spend my time on.
Yeah.
And,
sounds cool.
at that point, I was still working a full-time job. So it wasn't quite the time to do it. But I retired about 2 years ago.
Okay, cool.
And so now that I'm on a pension, looking for a little bit of extra cash for sundry things for my comic
you're
book
looking
purchase.
for a little extra cash, so you went for the surefire hit of making comics.
Of making comics,
Yeah,
exactly.
because,
My wife's like, so how much have you made, and how much have you spent?
I shouldn't say this, but I've had this YouTube channel for 3 years now, and I've made $21 in 3 years.
Hey, yeah. So,
but on the bright side, that's $7 a year. So,
you don't have to pay much taxes on that. So,
well, I can't even get it yet. You have to make 100 before you can even get the money.
That's right.
So YouTube is making interest on my money, not me.
See, I haven't made any money off my YouTube channel.
I
probably never will.
Just want to say hello to everybody in the chat. We got Madness Comic Network. Check them out. They're a bunch of creators making their own comics and doing their own thing. Then we got me. We got Arthur Tripp, who's been one of my biggest supporters since the beginning of this channel. Thank you, Arthur. You're a great guy. We actually met a few times. He worked for Stan Lee and Jack Kirby when he was a kid. Believe it, We got Matt Bear, who's the artist on your boy Zach, which he's the artist on
I know.
Rock and Roll Ninja.
Yeah.
And then Warduke. He said, welcome. Warduke
is Warduke.
One of my original guys who started listening to me back when I was on my phone whispering it because I was shy and embarrassed to be doing this. And I just wanted to say hello to everybody. So
absolutely.
So have you met Bill Black?
Many, many times. Yeah, I actually consider him one of my friends at this point.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And FemForce is still coming out, right?
They passed 200. 201 should be in shops probably in the next week or so if it isn't already. I'm a little delayed in when I get stuff because I have to get it through Midtown Comics mail order. So I don't know if it's actually on the stands or not. It's never on the stands. People have it on their pull list. And
I'm a little, I get mine from a subscription service. So, because when I first moved out here, I've been doing it for years because I guess I'm a bad person, but I get my comics shipped to me. So I think I get my comics like last because I'm already seeing like people making videos of new comics. But my channel is mostly about old comics, so it doesn't really matter. So I don't know where I stand.
Yeah.
But
I know Bill Black's working on issue 202.
Oh, good. And is that the only thing that EC Comics is still publishing? Is FemForce?
No. They still do they still do reprint books. Yes. And that's actually part of the reason why I like Jungle Girls and why I've done a Jungle Girl comic is AC for almost probably since the late 80s, early 90s, has reprinted old public domain stories from defunct companies. Right. And they've had, big anthologies and big books, and sometimes they'll focus on certain companies or certain houses, but they're really the best. If you want to read old comic books and you don't have the money to buy old comic books, AC's reprints are the way to go because for $25 you can get a compendium of old stories by some of the legendary artists of the Golden Age.
Yeah, I like Golden Age comics, and that I'm sure, like all of us, that those comics, they were before my time, so they're hard to get.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm a big fanboy of AC Comics. I pick them up every time I put it in an order. I get 1 or 2 AC Comics, and as I read a new comic, I'll see an advertisement for something else. One of the things that struck me is in the American Comics, or I forget, they had the Sentinels of Justice, which was Blue Beetle, Captain Atom, Nightshade, and I can't even think of the
the question. The question,
how did Bill Black was able to publish that when DC was, because this was like after the Crisis on Infinite. This was there any problems with
that? Well, and I've gotten this wrong before, and Bill's corrected me, so I'm not sure if I'm going to get it right or wrong again. So don't take what I say as absolute truth. But Charlton Comics still existed, and they licensed that to Bill for he was, so that was, I think, under a license right before DC acquired Charlie.
Oh, okay.
So that's how that happened.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then, so they were going to have the Sentinels of Justice or whatever. But Bill already had other characters. So he ended up later he put out a Sentinels of Justice book with his own characters.
Right.
So because he has either characters, because he's a kid he's not quite the golden age in terms of but he's pretty much there. He's 50s, late 40s, I think. I'm not sure exactly when he was born, but he's up there. And still plugging away. He actually makes movies of his. He makes his own films.
Yeah, I see advertisements for movies and
yeah. But he's amazing. He's just an amazing. And more people should know, because as he's an independent publisher,
right?
I mean, and AC Comics is the last of those first independent publishers, and they're the only one. They're the only ones still here. I mean, he started in like
72.
He started in 69 with Paragon, I think, doing prozines. Was his own little.
Yeah, I knew he's been around for at least as long as I've been alive, So, and he's still chugging along. I got to give him credit.
Yeah,
he's an unsung hero in the comic book world, if you ask me.
But when the direct market was created in the early 80s, there was Pacific and First and AC, and and a couple others, and they were like the first independent publishers, really.
Yeah.
And it was a shop. It was it was creative. You have Bill was writing and inking, and
they all went bye, and he's still around.
He's managed to navigate how many ups and downs and crashes, and they just put their nose to the grindstone and work harder.
That means
it's an amazing group of people who have kind of been the core group of AC Comics, and they've had some great freelancers start with them and then move on to Marvel. That's people would want to get,
I've seen Eric Larson in one of his comics.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric Larson drew a Night Vale comic book for them. Yeah.
And, why can't the names are blanking out? But I've seen some people who went on to become big names.
Yeah, Paul Ryan, Rick Levins. Paul Ryan,
there you go.
Yeah. Both of whom have passed, unfortunately. But so it was kind of a breaking in company. And then when you had proven you could do a monthly comic book, one of the big companies would snatch you up. And
that's the way it used to be. Now you just have to, I don't know, have the right identity.
Yeah.
You worked your way through AC and Comico and First, and then you were a proven seller, you were a proven talent. How many comics did Chuck Dixon make before Marvel, would touch him? That's the way it used to be. Just, and I don't think I'm hurting anybody's feelings. I don't think I'm hurting Bill Black's feelings when I say, you baseball, you go to the minor leagues, you go, the farm leagues, minor leagues, and then you go to the major leagues. Now it's. Can you imagine if baseball, they just picked you because okay, we don't have any not gender binary people, and you're going to be the pitcher now. And then when the team loses, everybody boos. You call them Nazis.
Yeah.
Because, sports is one of the last true meritocracies left.
Well, right now we'll see how long it lasts.
Yeah. But let me ask you this: what I did one of my earliest videos was an AC Comics. Again, I didn't have any illusions of not that I made it now, but you know what I'm saying. Now I'm talking to people doing live chat, but I was just I like this comic. I'm going to make a video on it, and I did an AC comic, a FemForce comic, and Heroinberg. The guys at Heroinberg reached out to me. Are you familiar with that?
I know Manny in Heroinberg.
Yeah, well, for those
I've got a couple of their books, and
for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Heroinberg is Pitt. A bug just flew in my face. They're a Pitts. I'm having difficulty speaking tonight, guys. Maybe me and Mitch O'Connell should retire, but they're a Pittsburgh group of comic book creators. They not only do they make a comic book, but they make a TV or a web show, and
Yeah.
it's mostly females, and they as superheroes and supervillains.
Yeah.
And you know, you could go online to heroinberg.com and watch their stuff. And they directly say that they were inspired by Bill Burke and FemForce. So that's why this conversation is. And he was like the first person to reach out to me and, you know, sent me comics. I was like, wow, people are sending me comics. Yeah. And then he was one of the first live chats. So I just want to always acknowledge the people
yeah, Heroinberg has been a big help to me. He's been a big help to me. We're, like you say, we're both FemForce fans. His work is very heavily inspired by FemForce. He is, you know, he'll proudly acknowledge that. And he's a good guy. He's offered help whenever he could. And I've never met him. It's odd because, well, I haven't knowingly met him. Oh. When Ed Coots, who's the primary artist on my book, and we used to go to Pittsburgh's Comic-Con regularly throughout the 2000s. And so I was at the Pittsburgh Comic-Con probably 10 or 12 years.
Okay.
And Heroinberg is from Pittsburgh. So I'm assuming he was at that show, and I was at that. He
was in his civilian identity.
But I don't know that we ever crossed paths. But we may have.
So let me just ask this. So you have Tantalizing Adventures.
Yes.
I don't know why I'm having difficulty speaking tonight. I'm usually pretty loquacious. So tell me about Tantalizing Adventures. I like what I saw so far, but let's hear.
Tantalizing Adventures. I'll show you. This is the Bill Black cover. That'll go out to backers, and this is the Ed Coots cover that will go out to backers.
Ed Coots' artwork is very familiar to me. What else did he draw?
He's done FemForce. He's done a couple of covers for FemForce.
Yeah.
But other than that, he's done some pulp detective like novel covers. Okay. So he's done a Domino Lady cover and some other things. But he's at a lot of shows in the New York area, or he used to be at a lot of shows in the New York area. So you may have seen his stuff.
Yeah, I know I've seen his stuff. I can't remember people's names, but I remember faces and I remember art styles.
Yeah. Well, Ed's art is memorable. So
where was Tantalizing Adventures?
So Tantalizing Adventures is it's 5 stories. They all feature my character Alina Aguilar, who is a botanist by profession, but you know, the checks don't always come through when she mostly does field research in South America. And when the checks aren't coming through from her university, she'll take odd jobs like, you know, being a location scout for a film crew or a jungle guide. And you know, she's in the jungle. She's been used as an asset by the U.S. government to try to locate narco traffickers and things like that.
So it's set in modern times.
It's set in modern times.
Okay, because whenever I think of Jungle Girls, I always think of the 50s.
Well, yes, but it's inspired by the 1950s Jungle Girls. You know, Irish McCalla as Sheena in the 50s TV series.
The other one, that Nyota, I always forget how.
Nyoka. Bill Black's done films of. He's done Nyoka movies.
My first one was Rima, the Jungle Girl from DC.
Rima, yeah, Lorna, Rula,
gorgeous.
Yeah. So all these Jungle Girls and you know, some of those 50s Jungle Girls and 40s Jungle Girls. That's what's inspired AC Comics, which is what inspired me, and it's called Good Girl Art.
Yes.
And you know, that and the kind of Vargas pinup girls of the 50s and the Elvgren pinup girls of the 50s.
I love those.
That's that art style. And, you know, good girl art then evolved into bad girl art in the 90s. And then you had Evangeline and some of the, you know, Image books.
Yeah.
But that good girl art style is always, I've you know, that's what FemForce has. That's what, you know, so that's what this book has.
Yeah, Good Girl Art, for those who don't know, it's cheesecake, but not over the top. It's tastefully done, but with cheeky, I guess is a good way to describe it. Tasteful cheekiness. You know, I there's nothing wrong. Like I said, I gave up saying that I was that AC was my guilty pleasure, because if you like something, you like something. Don't apologize for liking something. That movie that everybody hates that you like. I'm just like, guys, I like it. I'm not going to apologize. As my chair sinks down, man, things just I can't talk. My chair sinking down. Bug flew in my face. Yeah. This is like the outtake video.
Well, yeah, it's classic art. That's yes. That's that kind of straightforward storytelling, and it's action adventure stories, and there's not a lot of fluff to it, and there's not a lot of just sitting around talking and having a cup of coffee, maybe a panel, not a couple pages, so that's kind of how my book is set up. I don't know if you have access to the trailer on Indiegogo to show like the. No,
I would have had to get it before the talk had uploaded to files and everything, but so I
it was. That's
watch it, but it would show up on stream. Is what.
Yeah. One of the links I have is to that, but it's. I mean, I can try to kind of show you.
So your comic is live on Indiegogo right now.
It's live on Indiegogo, but it's down to just over a week. So we have a
left, or it just started.
A week left.
Okay.
So we have a table of contents, a page, and Ed did the drawing for that. And then the first story. The first story is got art by Rudy Nebres.
Oh, didn't he do Rima?
Rudy, he probably was on Rima, but I think most people are most familiar with Rudy because he inked a lot of Savage Sword of Conan stuff in the 70s. He and Alfredo Alcala and Tony DeZuniga and that whole wave of Filipino artists who came over and kind of inked John Buscema and others in the Savage Sword of Conan. So Rudy penciled the story, The Objective, and Ed Coots put an ink wash on it, and cool. And then I got it colored and lettered. The painting is this side here is was the cover of the second issue of Vavavoom, and it's partial of the cover. It's like half of the cover, but that was based on a Rudy pencil drawing that Ed then painted.
Cool.
So
Arthur was trying to remind us that the Kubert School was another path to work in the comic book field for artists.
Yeah.
And then I just want to say hello to my buddy Roy, who's one of the first people I met when I moved out here. Thank you, Roy. Hope your house didn't burn down. I did some electrical work on his house, and he comes over here and beats me in board games very regularly.
Yeah. So, and then the second story is Movie Magic, and she was a location scout for a film crew.
That's a great idea.
The Instagram model who is kind of financing her own Jungle Girl movie, but she wants to do everything, but the stunts scare her, so they keep having to pull Alina in to do the stunts because
that's a great idea.
She's a real Jungle Girl. I'll tell you that the idea for that story, and your readers will get. This is probably the first time it's been publicly noted. So this is Bill Black's alternate cover on this page.
Okay.
You can see it here.
Okay.
But I had asked Bill because just the whole making of this book was really inspired by Bill Black. And I was like, would you consider doing an alternate cover for me? And he, agreed. And then he sent me this cover. He sent me the ink drawing for this. And I'm like, I've got to use it.
Yeah.
But now I have a cover and I have no story that has an elephant and a gun, and so I had to create a story
Well,
for
that's
the
a great
book
idea that you came up with. I think
to incorporate the fact that I had that cover.
I really do like that. I think that's brilliant. An Instagram model wants to make her own movie, and she has to hire somebody competent. It writes itself. That is a great, because of the guy that you admired and inspired you. You made a website for him. He liked it, made it official. Now you're working. Your friend. This is a great story. This is a great comic book story.
Yeah,
I really like it.
It's been just wonderful.
And I could tell you smiling the whole time you're telling the story. You know what I mean? That is just that's the way it's gonna be with me and John Byrne one of these days. He doesn't know it yet, but we're gonna be best friends.
Maybe.
Yeah.
You never know.
John Byrne, he's gonna be like, wow, yeah. I sound like a stalker, right?
Yeah. So so that's the movie magic story, and the artist on that the penciler was Bobby Ragland, who's drawn a lot of Fem4 stories in the last couple.
Could you say his name again? I missed the name.
Bobby Ragland.
Okay, yes, I recognize the name.
Yeah, so he's done some Fem4 stories the last couple of years, and just great guy. I got to actually meet him for the first time in person at the Baltimore Comic-Con a few weeks ago.
I'm trying to look to see if I have any AC Comics right here on my stack.
Yeah, and so Bobby drew that story, and then the third story in the book is Predator and Prey. Predator and Prey was drawn by Rob Jones, and he drew this probably 18 years ago.
Oh, wow.
But it's never been published in color, and I think only the first half of the story ever got published. So, but Rob was a apprentice back when there was such a thing to Dick Giordano.
Wow. There's a good pedigree.
Yeah. And so and
for those of you who don't know, Dick Giordano was a long-term guy at DC. He did it all. I think he wrote, he drew, and I think he was an editor. And I think at one point he was like an administrator of DC, like one of the guys that actually ran the company.
I think you're right.
But man, I think his artwork was like very stately, and I would consider him like an elder statesman of comic book art. So that's really good pedigree to have. I really like Dick.
Dick Giordano did some Wonder Woman work that I always really loved. And so
Rob, it's funny because when you say people's names, their artwork pops into my head. Like their faces. I could picture the Dick Giordano head that he Like John Byrne always had the similar face, the Steve Ditko faces,
Yeah.
It's funny because I say that to my wife and she looks at me and she's like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, when you say an artist, when you've been reading comic books for 50 years, that like, boing, and like Walt Simonson, if I say Walt Simonson, the big boxy shoulders of Thor.
Thor.
You got me off on a tangent when you said Dick.
But that's
showed up like a stoplight.
But that's how comic book fans talking about comic books should go off on.
And that's what I wanted to do with the channel, was to talk about nonsense like this that probably you and these 6 people watching right now understand. Well, I also wanted to, if I may be crass, thank you for becoming a member of the channel. I appreciate it. The $21 that I made will be going towards making a comic book in the future.
Hey,
I started doing it, and all of a sudden it's like this snowball is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I'm starting to panic.
Well, it's a lot of fun, and as a hobby, there are more expensive hobbies.
Yes.
I could, if I was a car guy, my wife would.
Do you have any other hobbies besides comics?
Not really. Not at this point. I mean, when I was younger, I had more hobbies. I've kind of.
Roy over here, as you can see behind me, it's all board games. So Roy comes regularly for board games.
Yeah. No, I missed the video game. I'm not the video game generation.
I'm not much of a video gamer.
My son is, he's in here playing video games all the time. Luckily it's past his bedtime now, so I told him he couldn't play tonight. But he's only 12, so he doesn't get to stay up as late. But
my hobby's worth the car.
Yeah. Well,
I'd rather
rather
have board games and comic books than a car.
I know guys who are
I know
guys who are car guys, and when you start getting into fixing up 50s cars to get them looking nice,
cool.
it can run into the 5 and 6 figures to do that.
If we hit the lottery, I know my wife's going to be out there with a muscle car, big old. But I'll still drive my Ford Escort. I'm not a car guy. My brothers are into motorcycles, and they're working on their motorcycles and driving their motorcycles. And,
Yeah, my brother-in-law is a car guy, and he flips cars like other people flip houses. He flips old cars. So.
One of the guys I work with, he does high-end cars, and he meticulously restores them and details them. Yep. He'll go out with a sewing needle and do the leather around the steering wheel. I mean, is really. I one of the things I really like is first off, I like talking about comic books. But if you have a bizarre hobby or an interesting hobby, I'll sit there and listen to you fascinated. Like if I may go off on a tangent for 5 minutes, when I came back from college, I was walking back down my street, just looking at my street. I was away for a decade, and one of my neighbors called me in, and she was like, "Oh, John, I used to play with her son when we were kids, and we were just talking. Oh, how you doing? Blah 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 blah. We're catching up, and they had these glass. They look like bells, glass bells, all along their fireplace. So the husband, who didn't speak a word, just sat there, just nodding his head, pleasant guy. And when I said, "What are those?" he jumped up, and these are glass insulators up on telephone poles that the wires get wrapped around. They're ceramic. And the green ones are made here, and the red ones and he talked for 2 hours about these ceramic bell-shaped things like that you'd screw onto, because you know what I mean. You couldn't have the wire.
Right? Oh yeah. I know exactly what.
Otherwise there'd be I didn't know these things existed. I didn't know that they were collectible. I didn't know anything about them. And him and his sons would go upstate and find old defunct telephone poles that they just took the wires off, and they would go up and unscrew. And there's a whole internet community. I was like, oh my God, I love that. So yeah, I'll listen to you talk about your flipping. I love hobbies. I love when people talk about hobbies.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much down to. I still have fairly young kids. I've got a kid in high school. I've got a kid in middle school.
Okay.
And so most of my
comics?
No, not as hard as I try. No. But my son's not into a lot of things that. I mean, he doesn't like watching television. He's not so.
You're gonna tell me he's really into doing the dishes and
no, it's all video games all the time.
Yeah, it's all video games.
We have to convince him to do stuff outside of the house. So.
I'm one of 7 kids, and I'm the only one in my family without kids. So I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and I'm old enough now that my nieces and nephews have kids.
Yeah.
So there's 55 youngins running around, and it's funny because I consider the 30-year-olds youngins, and none of them read comics. Not one of them reads comics, and they'll come over here and I'll show them the comics. Like, that's cool. They're not interested,
They're not even interested in my books. I mean, it's like, Daddy did a comic book. Oh, okay, that's nice.
Yeah, it's almost embarrassing.
Can you give me a ride over to so and so's house?
Yeah. But a lot of them are into manga.
It's my son will watch. He says he doesn't like anime, but he watches a lot of anime. I don't know if he understands what anime actually is. But yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I learned to read through comic books.
Yep. I've told that story before. Before comic books, I remember distinctly. I was in 3rd grade, and I couldn't read. I was in the worst reading group. I told the story like 20 times. I'm not going to go over it in detail, but I couldn't read, and I transferred into the school, so I didn't know anybody. I was the new kid who couldn't read, and I'm sitting next to the kid who couldn't pull his pants up when he came out of the bathroom. And everybody would laugh at him, and then now me and him is sharing a reading book. So. I knew I was stupid. And then I made 2 friends that were always reading comic books. And I remember we all three of us, we slept over our house, and then we were just sharing comics. You know how many times you do that as a kid? You read this comic, and they're talking about. I didn't know the names of the characters. It was an X-Men comic, and back then the X-Men. Remember, the X-Men was almost canceled, so I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know who these guys are. Wolverine. Nobody. I didn't even know what this animal oval. You know, this was. You know, this was around 103, X-Men 103. So I didn't know it, and I was embarrassed. And then I started reading. You know, because. Let's be realistic. In third grade, when you go home, do you do math? You know, that's an activity for school. When you go home, are you going to read? That's a school activity, you know? So
right.
Then I realized that reading could be a fun. And by the end of the year, I was in the top reading group, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's.
But I still never learned to pull up my pants. So Roy says something. He learned to read from the D&D books. Roy is an active Dungeons & Dragons. I've never played Dungeons & Dragons with Roy, and Roy's never played we're like two ships that keep missing when it comes to that. Yeah, D&D was another. Yeah, I remember carrying those hardcover books and reading them and again, if I could go off on a tangent, I remember trying to get one of my friends to play Dungeons & Dragons, and I decided I'm not going to tell him it. I'm just going to say it's fun. It's interactive storytelling. You could be a knight. And then he went away to his summer house for the summer, and I was like, okay, when you come back in 8 weeks, we'll play some Dungeons & Dragons. When we came back in 8 weeks, he's like, I'm not playing this Dungeons & Dragons. Don't even ask me. I'm done. And I'm like, well, what happened? You know, and he said one of the kids up there where he was staying at his summer house, the next door neighbor's like, oh, he's like, yeah, my friend John and I are going to play Dungeons & Dragons. He goes, oh, I play Dungeons & Dragons. And he handed him a stack of hardcover books and said, read this. And then tomorrow, and he's like, read. Big stack of textbooks. This is summer vacation, and he's like, no. So that was the absolute worst way to teach somebody Dungeons & Dragons. Read these textbooks and get back.
Yeah.
No. You know, when I taught my wife, I just okay. Well, this is a character. We're gonna make up a character. What do you want to do? You know, you don't need to know the rules. I know the rules. You either trust me or you don't. How's that, Roy? Is that a good pitch? You gonna come over and play Dungeons & Dragons with us? I have no idea what you're talking about, Arthur. How about barbed wire invented by a woman, 6 inch of her wire? So, okay, cool. Is that a hobby? I don't know. Barbed wire hobby? All right. So, as you can tell, the caffeine's kicking in finally. I'm no longer. So, I'll be quiet for a couple minutes. There you go. How was that for a 20-minute rant?
So I think we left off on Rob Jones and Dick Giordano.
Yeah, I know. I just went to Jupiter.
No, that's I love it. That's how it should be.
That's what I'm famous for. Sometimes I just see my wife going, "He's doing it again."
So I guess you're not up to this artist in your FemForce.
No, I think I just got up to 26. I think I'm up to 26.
So probably the best FemForce run artist wise was Brad Gorby, and he did this painting over here of Valina.
When did he start his run?
He was on FemForce through 109.
Oh yeah, I'm nowhere near that.
But he started probably in issue 40. He had some stories, but then he kind of was the main penciler. By the time it hit 60 something, he was the main penciler. So probably for 40, probably about from 40 something, issue 40 something to issue 109. Cool, so he was on the book. I mean, and Brad's a fabulous artist, fabulous. And then so the fourth story, which is I wanted to get the book out in time for Halloween because it's kind of a monster story.
Oh, slasher story?
It's monsters. It's and I don't want to say the universal monsters, but a werewolf, a vampire. A
werewolf is a werewolf. That's part of folklore.
A werewolf, a vampire, a Frankenstein, an alien, different kinds of monsters. So she runs into these monsters. Abbott and Costello meets the werewolf. Okay. Does that count? I watched a lot of the slasher movies when I was younger, the Friday the 13th and the Halloween and stuff like that. But I'm not good at I don't like jump scares, so I pretty much stay away from a lot of the horror movies.
I can watch horror movies and I don't get scared. You know, a jump scare will startle you, but you know that's kind of like cheating. But like a psychological scare, oh my god, I almost can't take that.
Yeah.
I still say Rosemary's Baby is one of the scariest movies ever made because of this conspiracy of everybody. They're all in on this, and this poor woman can't get out of it, and she's not doing anything wrong. It's not like the monster's coming. I'm going to go take a shower like in every slasher film. You know,
Right.
Rosemary's just pregnant and trying to get help. You know, that scares me. And then the Hitcher scares me with Rutger Hauer. You know, because that could happen. But anyway, you know,
there was a horror movie in the late 80s, early 90s. I can't remember. Maybe it was earlier than that. I think it was called Prince of Darkness.
Oh, I saw that in the movie theater.
That scared the absolute bejesus out of me. I had nightmares.
Yeah. Alice Cooper gets stabbed with a bicycle. No, Alice Cooper stabbed somebody with a bicycle. Yeah.
Yeah. It just was, that one scared the heck out of me. And then when I was really, really young, I saw
John Carpenter. He did like a trio of movies that were related.
Yeah, we had a feature on Sunday nights on our independent channel. This is back before cable, so you had three networks, and you had like PBS, and you had an independent channel. And the independent channel used to do a thing called Fright Night on Sunday nights. It's like a guy had a flashlight underneath his chin or whatever, and he was the host. But I saw like the Bela Lugosi Dracula, but I was probably like 7 or 8. And that was like, just scared me as a 7-year-old. That's a scary movie, or at least back then that was a scary movie. So I've never been as into, you know, kind of really being hardcore scared. The Abbott and Costello stuff was much more my speed.
Just want to say hello to Scott. Thank you for showing up. He's another one who lives out here, and Scott wins all the games. Not me, not Roy, Scott. So if you're playing with Scott, just understand he's going to win.
Then,
one of the smartest people I know.
I probably shouldn't show this page. There's no nudity, but it's close. Let me show.
Probably sell your book.
So the last story is a little more complicated. Oh, this one's not.
So you got Tantalizing Tales, and it's on Indiegogo right now, and you can pick this up.
Yep, and this is the last story. This is Destination Danger, and it's kind of the repercussions from that Predator and Prey story play out. But she ends up on the run, and when she's on the run, more bad stuff happens, and this is one of the bad things that happens when she's on the run. And that's Ed Coots did the art in that story, and he did the art in Monsters.
So I see these are collected 5 stories each. Do they come out as floppy comics?
I've never put them out as a single floppies. Rudy's story was published in black and white in Va 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 Voom #2. And like I said, that's 20 years ago. And available on Indie Planet if you just wanted to see Rudy's story. But it's in color in this book.
Who's your colorist?
My colorist is, I have 2 colorists. One's name is Matt Finn, and he colored Rudy's story. And then Victor Ranieri, who is in Brazil, colored the rest of it. Well, Rob Jones's story was colored by a different colorist, but all Ed's stories and Bobby's story were colored by Victor Ranieri.
And you're also the editor, and you compile the files, and you do all that stuff.
I'm the editor. I compiled the files. I got them off to the printer. I selected the printer.
So if I click on Indiegogo right now, buy it, you're gonna put it in a box and mail it to me?
I am, although I'm going to put it in a box and mail it to you in the middle of next week, because I've actually got everybody's boxed up right now, but I haven't closed the box up. And Ed Coots is going to come. He's going to get a bus down here from New York, and he's going to sign all the books.
Oh, cool.
Before I send them out. So he's going to do that on Monday or Tuesday. And I'm going to throw in a couple extra things just because I'm happy.
The reason why I ask is I'm just, again, I'm I have an artist, Renzo Rodriguez, and he's drawing my comic as we speak. And then
Renzo's really good, by the way.
Oh yeah, Renzo is outstanding. If this is your show. I want to now I can't find it. Oh, but this is this is his first drawing of my character, the patriarch. It's I want to make heroic tales, so it's going to be each issue self-contained superhero story. Like you and I read growing up as a kid. They're all good guys versus bad guys, stakes, consequences.
Yep.
And believe me, if anybody dies in heroic tales, they're dead. There's no multiverse. There is other dimensions, but there's no infinite John's long boxes running around who could just jump in and take the place. I hate that stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you, and because I feel that way, my one character, my sci-fi character, in her story, she goes through a anomaly in space that basically makes infinite versions of her. So she has died in a story.
Oh,
but that was in that version of her, and other versions of her are in other adventures and other alternate universes. So she's like I gave myself I can do anything I want to this character and still be able to use her.
It's funny.
Other stories.
If I may give spoilers, in issue number 2, I don't even want to mention the name of the character because I don't want anybody, but she has probability powers, and so she could alter probabilities to her favor. First off, she doesn't know she could do it, and then as she realizes she could do it, she realizes the consequences of her actions. So here's a person, like, if one of the things she does is I don't want to spoil it, I think, but she does something out of pure kindness and nothing malicious. She just does it without even thinking because she can't control. She didn't even know she had these powers, and it freaked her out because she knows that the world is one way and now the world is another way. So she can't deal with the consequences of her powers. And then she realizes the consequences of her powers is even more in depth and unforeseen. I'm trying to talk around.
Right.
So this is my answer to, like, this is what would happen in a multiverse. You can't. So Scarlet Witch dies or Gamora dies over here. So you pull her out of this dimension. Well, what about her family in that dimension? That's a bad example because she doesn't have family. Thanos doesn't care. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, so you pull over this character out of this dimension. Does her children mourn her over there? Like, because you're selfish and so make it so I make it a superhero who doesn't want to use their powers. That's and it's like the One Ring. I could turn invisible and get out of here, but will it corrupt me? And if I keep altering the multiverse or whatever probability, how long before the planet's unrecognizable because of consequences?
Yeah.
But and that should be a self-contained story. But anyway, I this is your show, and I keep talking about me and my next door neighbor.
No, it's your show, and we can talk about anything comic book related. So yeah.
So are you going to make? So this you have Tantalizing Adventures, and that's about your jungle character.
That's my jungle character.
So are you going to make another collection of your sci-fi character?
Well, my sci-fi character, eventually, yes. I have a couple stories with her. One that's halfway finished. They're already drawn. So I could.
Who's your artist on that?
Various artists, but
cool.
16 of the pages were by Bill Narimon, who drew.
He did some.
He drew some Marvel stuff. He worked for Marvel.
Okay.
After he worked for AC Comics, but he worked for Marvel too. Bill's a good guy. I used to sit at his table with him at MegaCon down in Florida when I would go down there. Just a really good guy and a nice good artist, nice guy. But the next one, Bobby Ragland's actually penciling my superheroine, and so we're going to have a big superhero story, the Ace, and that's going to be
Do you have a picture of Ace available? And I'm sorry if I put you on the spot.
No, not that I can get to you, because
Okay.
I have them on my computer, but I don't have one kind of
Okay.
hanging out here. No.
I'm just curious to see what Ace looks like. I always like to see people's superhero designs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you go to vavavavoomonline.com,
Okay.
which I can put that in the chat, I guess.
Yeah, put it. Yeah,
Let me
put whatever links you want in the chat, and then after we're done talking, send me whatever links, and I'll put it in the description.
It's going to make me sign in under my other Gmail account, I think. But I don't remember the password for that, so I can't. Let me put it in the private chat, because I can get to that, and if you want to move it into the
Sure.
regular chat.
So, let's see if I could do this. All right. There we go.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, cool. I'm learning. Yeah. I'm learning too.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, all my characters, well, not all of them, but most of my characters are up. They have kind of a section on that site, and you can see different images of them and read a little bit of their background. This book is 80 pages of stories, and it's 92 pages total, not counting the front and back covers. So inside covers. The front cover's got a lot of information on it, and the back inside cover, if you buy that tier on Indiegogo, Ed will do an original drawing on the back cover. Back inside back
week
cover.
Left at Indiegogo.
Yeah, about a week. Yeah. So, like I said, if you want an original drawing from him and you want it fast, you'd want to get that tier in the next day or two, so that he'll draw it when he's down here on Monday or Tuesday. Because that's the main reason he's coming down, is to sign books and to do the sketches for the people.
Is this your first crowdfunding campaign?
This is my first crowdfunder. Yeah.
How do you find it?
It's been a lot of work. I mean, it's a lot of selling, which, my job was not a sales job. I sat behind a desk mostly. So getting myself out there and getting on shows and podcasts, and I had joined Twitter, which I had never been on Twitter before, just so I could
I've been enjoying Twitter, man. I've been meeting people like you, and
so it's been a lot of, when I did Vavavavoom, all I had to do was send it to the printer, and then they sold it through their shop, and I could buy my own books back for a discount and sell them at shows. So I didn't have to, really worry about the post-production as much. I've had a lot more editing and post-production work, and then the marketing part of it has been a lot more time-consuming.
Yeah, everybody's got to be their own Stan Lee these days.
Yeah.
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 That's what when I had Eric July on, I was asking if he had it, because he's got the charisma. Apparently he's got the business savvy, and and he's got the resources. I was kind of like, I'm gonna push Eric July to do anything he doesn't want to do. Who the hell am I? But I was kind of like hoping that he would be like, yeah, like I'm sure you remember Eclipse Comics. Eclipse Comics was this wonderful comic book company that they didn't have any characters. You came and you brought, Aligar there and your Tantalizing Comics, and they published it. And they took their profits. They advertised it. They did everything, and all you did, you were free to write. And they would look for an artist, and you work together. And that's all Eclipse was. They didn't have a shared universe, except once in a while a couple of guys would crossover, but that was between the creators. And I thought that was a wonderful, wonderful system. Unfortunately, a flood and then a divorce ruined that company. But I had Kate Ironwood on my channel a couple of weeks ago. She was the editor in chief of
Mm-hmm.
Eclipse. I think one of the most important comic book companies to ever exist. So I'm kind of hoping that something like that arises. I heard Ethan Van Sciver is opening up a comic book store for crowdfunded comics, and I think that is a great step. I got really excited about that. You walk into a store and you see Tantalizing Adventures on next to Heroic Tales, my comic, and me and you could both, next to Cyberfront,
Yeah.
next to all, next to Private American, my comic book's right there next to a Mike Barron comic. How cool is that? And then you never know, maybe one comic store will lead to another. But this is, I think, is what's got to happen, because the casual guy just doesn't wake up and be like, you know what, I'm going to go look for a comic book on the internet today. Only people like you and I do that.
Yeah.
And I said that to Ethan Van Sciver, and I think he got a little annoyed that, but like, if I don't know about a hobby, I'm not all of a sudden going to start researching it. It's like you either have to be into comics or you stumble across it. And,
yeah, I mean,
2 rants in this video. You're doing pretty good. You get me to rant.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's the question is, would enough people come in off the street and check?
Well, I live in New York, so I will definitely be driving to New Jersey to check out Ethan's store.
I mean, but
you got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere.
Right? Walmart was one store at one point, right?
That's a business decision for him to make, whether he thinks it could be profitable for him, or would it just be, because commercial real estate rent is no joke, and you got to make that payment every month, and shops go under all the time.
Like if Eric July, like, it doesn't have to be a physical store. I was just hoping that, like, whatever July comic,
now,
like an online thing, like
an online, that would be very interesting. And there's sort of, is it comicscape.org that kind of does that, where they
I think that keeps track of all of it, but they don't publish.
There's one of them though that you can go to that site and they'll have links to where the book is for sale.
Yeah, I forget if it's .org. The closest to what I'm talking about is Fund My Comic. I've had Eric Stone on my channel, and if Fund My Comics, for those of you who don't know, it's only been around for about 6 months, and it's a competitor to Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and it's comic book centric.
Yeah,
and he'll help, like, you're like, oh, this is a good thing. Do you need a colorist? I know this guy. Do you need it formatted, which I don't know anything about. These are products that you're going to need. Here, read this. This is information. So I like to me, that's the beginning of what I'm talking about. Like,
and I've got my I've got it. Tantalizing Adventures is up on Fund My Comic as well.
Oh, good. So you know what I'm talking about.
I actually I have the continuing campaign option on there, so it's. I don't intend to necessarily take it down.
Yeah, why not?
It's going to act as an online storefront, essentially. I mean, that's something like that online, where especially all the Comicscape books but others. I got my Matt Finn, who colored the Rudy Nebra story, I found on Alterna Comics message boards. And Victor Ranieri, I found through Rick Offenberger, who does a lot of stuff relating to Archie and MLJ comics. And he's a Femforce fan, but he's got a book out called G-Man that he does Kickstarters with. And so he has colorists, and he was like, oh, well, Victor's going to be available, and he's good, and this is his rate, and I could afford him. And so that networking between creators to find a letterer, to find a colorist, to find an inker.
Yeah,
even to find a penciler who is available and good and will get the work done and not flake on you, and
Well,
that's
my
what
philosophy
that's
is.
what's needed, and I agree. I've found Fund My Comic to be very helpful.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in Fun My Comic, but my basic strategy is if RJ from the Fourth A does it, copy him, because he started doing live chats, and then I said, I'll try a live chat. He got Renzo to do his first comic, and then I said, I'm going to get Renzo. So I'm just going to do whatever RJ does. Just copy him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe I should talk about like, high mythology and everything like that, but I can't fake that. copy from the smartest. If you're gonna swipe,
Yeah.
And that's again, I can't believe that I'm on a first name basis with guys like that.
Yeah. It's luckily I met a lot of artists when I was just running a fan club and became friendly, so I already kind of had connections into a lot of artists. I'm friendly with a lot of the people who worked for AC Comics or who work for AC Comics. And so I've never really had an issue finding people, especially good girl artists, because I just am in that, I'm swimming in that pool.
Yeah.
So, and that's the kind of stuff I like. I like good girl art. I like classic storytelling. I like all kinds of different genres. I have a fantasy character too, like, she's not Red Sonja, but that's certainly Red Sonja was on my mind when I decided I wanted to have a character that fit that kind of genre. Because the Frank Thorne Red Sonjas were my first love, I guess.
Those are amazing, and he also did like a secondary character called Gita, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I discovered those in 1984 magazine, I think it was called. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's outstanding.
Yeah. So that's
little non-safe for work, but
Yeah. Well, that kind of artwork, that kind of storytelling, that it might seem a little old-fashioned, but it's classic and it just doesn't go out of style, in my opinion. No. And but it's Tantalizing Adventures is adventures and action and peril. I mean, there's a lot of getting into trouble and then having to get yourself out of trouble.
Okay.
And it's just all those Jungle Girl stories of the past, they're all, it kind of feels like it could be one of them.
Cool.
And
well, my wife is standing just on the other side of the screen eating my dinner as we speak. So
okay.
Yeah. So
well, we've been on for about an hour now. So.
I realize when I talk for 2 hours, I start to ramble and people lose interest. So I think I try to keep it as a hard, fast rule to stay as close to an hour as possible. So we'll close it out now.
All right.
So let's just, in conclusion, let's pretend we're in high school making a paper. In conclusion, you have Tantalizing Adventures. It's on Indiegogo right now, and it's live for another week.
Yep.
Right. And I'll put the link in the description if I didn't put it there already, because my mind is adult. This week has been crazy for me, working nights and then working days. I don't even know what day it is anymore. And you could also go to Fund My Comics, and it's in a continuing store, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And all right, yeah. If check this later on. If I messed up on the links, let me know, and I'll gladly fix everything. I want to help out. I think it's great for anybody to make comic books. I love comic books. I want to talk to people who make comic books. I want to talk to fans who make comic books. Oh, did the cat just knock over everything?
No, my dog, I think, is trying to get in. And
okay.
Door, so.
Yeah, the dog is like, an hour's up. Come outside and walk me. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anything you want to say?
No, it was great talking to you. I knew it would be. I knew it would be fun, and it was. So thank you very much for having me.
Open that door before that dog wrecks everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
John.
Thanks for talking. It was great. Bye.
Bye.